Audio Jungle.
Jamaicans among migrants intercepted by U.S. Coast Guard trying to get to Florida from Bahamas. The United States Coast Guard said on Friday that it returned 31 migrants to mixed nationalities, including Jamaicans, to the Bahamas following three detection of illegal maritime ventures in U.S. territorial waters east of Miami, Florida. The U.S. Coast Guard said four suspected smugglers were transferred offshore to Homeland Security investigators, agents of custom, to support further investigation for potential U.S. federal prosecution. The Margaret Novel's crew notified Coast Guard Section Miami Command Center watchstanders Sunday of a 25-foot recreational vessel transitioning west at a high rate of speed from the Bahamas to Florida with no navigation lights, the U.S. Coast Guard stated. It said Sector Miami watchstanders launched a Coast Guard Station Miami Beach boat crew and diverted the Coast Guard Cutter Richards crew, while Custom and Border Protection, Air and Marine Operations launched a coastal interception vehicle crew to respond. The migrants were from Jamaica, Haitian, and Chinese nationalities, the U.S. Coast Guard stated. On Wednesday, it said a Coast Guard station, Lake Worth boat crew, and Palm Beach Sheriff's Office Marine Patrol were inducted a vessel with two people on board. The U.S. Coast Guard said the suspected smugglers was transferred to the HSL for further investigation, and the other, a Honduran migrant, was transported to Border Patrol Agency to proceed for expedition removal. Holness refutes claims that Jamaica is in a recession. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has refuted claims that Jamaica is in a recession. He made this statement following criticism from the opposition People's National Party about the state of the country's economy. Speaking at a handing over ceremony unit in St. Ann on Friday, Mr. Holness noted that it is expected that the economy will sometimes fluctuate. However, according to the Prime Minister, his administration has created a resilient economy. He said Jamaica is not in a recession, as the low unemployment rate is a demonstration of the strength of the economy. The Prime Minister also noted that effort is being made to ensure that the country's economy can absorb shocks.
And this government has been able to deal with everybody who was affected by the hurricane. Over 14,000 persons have benefited with not some small grant, big grants like $400,000 to repair their homes. And it is still going on now. We're still in the field helping people who have not yet got their grants. We have assisted the farmers, and the farmers, I must thank the farmers. They went back out into the field and they have started to produce again. The latest report on consumer confidence and business confidence shows that both are rising, so that the outlook and the expectation of people is that the economy is going to do well. Jamaica is not in a recession. Recession is not only that economic growth has declined for 2 quarters. It is a necessary condition if you want to say that there is a recession, but it's not sufficient because you need to look at other variables, other factors. Unemployment. If the economy declines significantly, then you would expect to see a rise in unemployment. That is not happening. Consistently, we are showing very good unemployment figures. And in fact, we have been showing consistently for the last decade a decline in unemployment, and we are now at the lowest ever unemployment figure. When you look at businesses going, as I stand here, I see several trucks passing with aggregate. Where are they going to with the aggregate? They're going to build. So people are investing, people are building. So the economy is growing still, right? The challenge is that we have been hit by some shocks. And we are existing in a time when we will have quite a bit of shocks. And our mindset and mentality must change. We must be able to stand up and take the blows, absorb them, get back on our feet, and grow. Nobody is coming to save us. Nobody is giving us any favors. It's a new world. And this administration recognized that long ago, which is why we have been preaching to you, the people. We want you to be economically independent. That is what we want you to be, economically independent.
Serious miscarriage of justice. A man who the Privy Council ruled have suffered a serious miscarriage of justice because he was detained for 10 years while seeking to reduce 12 years worth of sentences to 3 years received an acknowledgement and declaration from the appeal court last Friday that his constitutional right to have his appeal heard within a reasonable time was breached. The court, however, said that Ray Morgan's contention that other rights that have been breached and that he is entitled to other constitutional reliefs are better left to be ventilated because the Supreme Court, the court with the original jurisdiction in this matter. Morgan was convicted on February 2011 of 4 counts of obtaining money by false pretense and was sentenced to 3 years on each count by a parish court judge who stipulated that the sentences should run consecutively, resulting in an aggregated sentence of 12 years imprisonment. Morgan, however, gave verbal notice of appeal against both conviction and sentence of the same day he was sentenced and subsequently produced his grounds of appeal to the prison's authority within 21 days of the court's judgment, as stipulated by the law. He argued that his sentence should have run concurrently, not consecutively, which would amount to a 3-year sentence, of which he would have already served 2 years. However, an error on the part of a prison authority resulted in the document outlining the grounds of his appeal being incorrectly submitted to the Court of Appeal instead of the Clerk of Courts. The appeal court labeled the situation a series of unfortunate events, which made it so that on Morgan's application for bail pending appeal and appeal, court judge ruled that in the absence of any ground of appeal filed within 21 days, as required by the Act, any appeal he had was deemed to be abandoned. Morgan completed serving his sentence, was released from prison, and made an application to have his appeal reinstated. In 2021, when the petition was heard, the appeal court refused the application on the basis that he did not demonstrate any merit in his appeal against conviction. The court also determined that although his complaints in respect of the sentences that were imprisoned showed some merit, because he had initially served those sentences, he would receive no benefit even if his sentences were adjusted to change the consecutive elements of concurrent. Morgan took his fight to the Privy Council, which in 2023 ruled that Jamaica's appeal court erred in concluding that an appeal against his sentence was academic because Morgan had served his sentence and therefore would receive no benefit if his appeal succeeded. According to the Privy Council, the appeal court erred in its treatment of the fact that the absence of the judge of the parish court reasons for imposing consecutive sentences and the inability to have the court to consider these reasons was a result of the justice system's own failure, for which Morgan can bear no responsibility. The Privy Council also concluded that his court was in error in failing to take into account the wider public interest in the exercise of its discretion under the Privy to hear the appeal, having regard to its general as well as particular significance and the strong public interest in ventilating the various administrative errors so that public confidence could be maintained in the judicial system. Last Friday, the appeal court panel, in acknowledging that Morgan produced his grounds of appeal to the prison authority on February 12, 2011, and his appeal was not concluded until June 2021, which was a delay in excess of 12 years, said it had chronicled the events leading to the delay, which was wholly the fault of the state. It cannot be reasonably argued that the delay in excess of 10 years before the appeal was heard in this case was demonstrably justifiable, and the Crown quite admirably did not attempt to do so. We find that the delay breach of the appellant's constitutional rights to have his appeal heard within the reasonable time, contrary to Section 16.1 and 16.8 of the Constitution, the appeal court stated. It, however, pointed out that Morgan had already served the sentence ordered by the judge of the parish court and would not be entitled to a reduction in sentence as an appropriate remedy. In answering the question of what is the appropriate remedy for the breach, the appeal court pointed out that in the strength of the overwhelming evidence against the appellant, were of the view that he could have reasonably entertained any realistic expectation of success on his appeal against conviction. In noting that there was merit in his appeal against his sentence, as demonstrated by the Privy Council, the court however noted that the appeal against the sentence is purely one of law in respect of which the learned judge notes of evidence could provide no material assistance. It however conceded that the appellant had demonstrated sufficient prejudice occasioned by the administrative errors of the state that prevented the timely transmission of his grounds of appeal to the court. The sentence imposed by the judge of the parish court was also manifestly excessive and was compounded by the delay in the appeal of being heard. The result was that not only did the appellant serve his sentence in full before his appeal was heard, but he served a sentence which have found was significantly longer than he ought to have served as punishment for his crime the appeal court stated. Addressing Morgan's claim for constitutional redress, the appeal court, however, said the appellant had already served the sentence ordered by the parish judge and could not be entitled to a reduction in sentence as an appropriate remedy. He is, however, entitled to obtain an acknowledgement, a declaration from the court that his constitutional right to have its appeal heard by the court within a reasonable time in accordance with Section 16.1 and 16.8 of the Constitution have been breached. The appellant's contention that other rights have been breached and that he is entitled to other constitutional reliefs are better left in the ventilated before the court with original jurisdiction in this matter, the appeal court stated. The ex-convict had had other run-ins with the law. In 2022, he pleaded guilty to defrauding veteran reggae singer Marcia Griffiths of approximately $4.8 million. Remember to subscribe, like, share, and click the notification bell for daily updates.